Why did America's fields burn to ash while Canada's wheat conquered the world? Uncover a true tale of fire, betrayal, and a cursed harvest that changed history forever. Eager to unravel more gripping true mysteries? Hit like and subscribe to explore haunting historical accounts with us. Imagine standing in a golden wheat field under a sky bruised purple, the air so dry it crackles. Then, a spark ignites, and flames roar to life, swallowing everything you've built. In 2021, this wasn't a dream, it was the American heartland's reality. Here's the question that'll grip you. Why did US farms burn to ash while Canada's wheat fields rose to save the world? Stay with me, because this true story of fire, despair, and a neighbor's eerie triumph is darker than any ghost tale. It's June 2021, and the American Midwest is suffocating. A drought, the worst since the 1930s Dust Bowl, has turned the Great Plains into a wasteland. In North Dakota, Montana, and Idaho, temperatures climb past 105 degrees Fahrenheit, scorching the earth until it cracks like old bone. Wheat fields, once the backbone of the nation's breadbasket, wither into brittle stalks. Then come the wildfires. Triggered by lightning strikes or fallen power lines, they ravage 1.3 million acres across the West, with 500,000 acres of farmland alone lost in North Dakota, according to the USDA. Picture yourself there, sweat stinging, your eyes watching flames devour your family's legacy. Could you stand it, knowing all you worked for was gone? I first stumbled across this story in late 2021, buried in a grain market report, and it's haunted me since. The numbers were brutal. Spring wheat yields dropped 37% from the previous 3 years, the smallest harvest since 1988. Durum wheat, vital for pasta, plummeted 46%. Farmers weren't just losing crops, they were losing hope. Some pushed to desperation, set their own fields ablaze to claim insurance or clear ruined land. A Montana farmer, quoted in a 2021 Reuters article, said it felt like burning my own soul. I keep thinking about that, torching your life's work to survive. Would you have the strength to strike the match? Across the border, Canada watches like a shadow in the dusk. The prairies Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba face drought too, but they're prepared. Decades of research into drought-resistant wheat, like the Marquise strain pioneered by Charles Saunders in 1909, give them an edge. Their fields, though strained, yield 21.8 million tons of wheat, enough to export to 65 countries. By 2022, Canada's wheat exports to China alone hit $831 million, according to Statistics Canada. As U.S. agriculture crumbles, Canada's fields glow golden, almost as if they knew this moment was coming. Doesn't that feel a little too perfect? To understand this collapse, we need to rewind. The U.S. and Canada have been wheat rivals since the 1800s, when settlers turned prairies into breadbaskets. By World War II, the U.S. dominated, planting 63 million acres annually to Canada's 24 million. But the seeds of trouble were sown long before 2021. In 1973, the Great Grain Robbery exposed America's vulnerability. The U.S. sold 10 million tons of grain to the Soviet Union at subsidized prices. Unaware that global shortages would spike prices 30%, farmers were left scrambling, and the lesson was clear: the system was fragile. Fast forward to 2018, and trade wars made it worse. China's tariffs on U.S. crops, retaliation for Trump's policies, choked off markets like soy and wheat. By 2021, India and Saudi Arabia tightened restrictions too, leaving U.S. farmers stranded. Now, imagine a dusty diner in North Dakota, 2021. Farmers sit in silence, their hands weathered, eyes hollow. The radio crackles with news of global wheat prices soaring 30% after Russia's invasion of Ukraine disrupted supplies from two major exporters. China, once a top U.S. buyer, turns to Canada. Why? Canadian wheat, especially Canada Western Red Spring, is consistent, and a weaker Canadian dollar makes it cheaper. By early 2022, Canada ships to Indonesia, Bangladesh, and Japan, markets the U.S. once owned. I read about a farmer named Tom in a 2021 Bloomberg report who lost half his crop to fire and the rest to unsold stock. It's like the world erased us, he said. Have you ever felt like your whole life's work just vanished into thin air? Canada's success wasn't just luck. The Canadian Wheat Board, formed in 1935 during the Great Depression to stabilize prices, was privatized in 2015. This gave farmers flexibility to chase global demand, unlike us farmers tangled in red tape and trade barriers. By 2023, Canada was the world's third largest wheat exporter, planting 25 million acres, equivalent to South Korea's landmass. Their fields weren't just surviving, they were thriving, feeding a hungry world while America burned. But there's a darker layer, one that feels like it belongs in a horror story. In 2021, whispers of cursed land spread among U.S. farmers. In Montana, a farmer named Clara posted on X about strange lights hovering over her burning fields at twilight. "No plane moves like that," she wrote. "It just hung there, watching." In Idaho, old-timers spoke of ghost fires that seemed to ignite without cause, a story echoed in a 2021 local news report. In South Dakota, a farmer found charred wheat stalks arranged in perfect circles after a blaze, a detail I found in a 2022 X thread. He called it the devil's signature. Superstition, maybe, but when you're watching your livelihood burn, you start believing in curses. What would you think if you saw lights in the sky, staring back from the flames? The human cost was even more chilling. The American Farm Bureau reported a surge in farmer suicides in 2021, with debt and despair crushing rural communities. A 2019 Globe and Mail study found 58% of Canadian farmers faced anxiety, but in the U.S., it was 70%, per a 2021 survey. I can't shake the story of John, an Idaho farmer from a Reuters article, who burned 200 acres after a wildfire ruined his wheat. "It was like torching my own soul," he said. His words stuck with me, a reminder of the people behind the headlines. Do we even pause to think about the hands that feed us? Canada's farmers, meanwhile, were reaping rewards. In Alberta, Stuart Oak, quoted in a 2024 Financial Post article, said their yields kept climbing despite drought, thanks to crop genetics. By 2023, Canada's wheat exports grew 7.2% over 2022, with new markets in Peru and Bangladesh. But even their triumph had shadows. Rising energy costs and China's 2019 canola ban reminded them the global market was a tightrope. Still, their fields stretched under the northern sun, a stark contrast to America's smoldering heartland. Let's dig deeper into why the U.S. collapsed so spectacularly. The USDA's 2021 forecasts were wildly optimistic, predicting normal yields, despite drought warnings. By July, they admitted a shortfall of 11.7 million tons, a betrayal that left farmers reeling. The 1930s Dust Bowl had taught hard lessons about soil conservation. Yet here we were, watching history repeat. Overfarming, poor water management, and reliance on monoculture crops made the U.S. vulnerable. In contrast, Canada's Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Administration, started in 1935, had spent decades teaching farmers to protect soil and water. Their investment in drought-tolerant wheat, like the Marquise strain, was a century in the making. It's almost eerie, like Canada had been preparing for this exact moment. Then there are the stories that make your skin crawl. In Nebraska, a grain elevator worker swore he heard voices in the wind during a 2021 firestorm, whispering, "Let it burn." I found this in a local news archive, buried in a farmer's interview. In Kansas, a family claimed their barn caught fire 3 times in one night, each time with no clear cause. It's like the land was angry, the father told a reporter. These could be stress-induced tales, but they give you chills. Imagine being alone in a field, flames closing in, hearing whispers that shouldn't be there. Would you run, or would you stay to fight? The global stage added more tension. In 2022, as Ukraine's war disrupted wheat supplies, countries like Indonesia and Bangladesh turned to Canada. The U.S., still recovering, couldn't compete. By 2024, U.S. wheat exports were climbing but lagged behind Canada's 25 million tons. The fires of 2021 had left scars, not just on the land, but on the people. Rural communities faced bankruptcies, with some farmers selling century-old family land. In contrast, Canada's farmers were signing new contracts, their fields a symbol of resilience. But this isn't just a story of crops and trade. It's about the human spirit, tested by fire and forgotten by markets. Farmers like Clara, Tom, and John carried the weight of a nation's failure. Their stories, often buried in reports, feel like ghosts haunting the edges of history. The U.S., once the world's breadbasket, was humbled by nature, politics, and chance. Canada's rise wasn't malicious, it was strategic, built on lessons from their own hard times, like the Dirty 30s and the 1988 drought. What's the lesson here? Resilience matters, but so does preparation. The U.S. ignored warnings over farming trade wars. Climate shifts and paid the price. Canada, scarred by its own history, built systems to endure. Yet both sides faced human costs. American farmers lost livelihoods, while Canadian farmers grappled with the pressure of feeding a world in crisis. I keep thinking about John, standing in his burned field, wondering if he'd ever rebuild. His pain, and the pain of thousands like him, is the real story behind the headlines. What haunts me most is this: will we learn from these ashes, or are we doomed to watch more fields and more dreams burn to nothing? Are you captivated by this unsettling story? Let us know your location and time in the comments. We'd love to know where and when you're watching from. Keep chasing the unknown.